Mike, aka Phil Jones, coming to you guys live in effect as always. And this is the Extraordinary Man Podcast. I am your host, as you all should know by now. And if you don't know, now you know. And you guys should know who that handsome gentleman on the other side of me is. It's the number one businessman in the tri-state area between Indiana, Michigan, and Illinois. It don't get no better than him. If you need it, he got it. He like Walgreens. Matter of fact, he like Walmart. He's as convenient as a McDonald's with as much stock and supply to get the job done as Walmart and Target combined. We just gonna call him. He gonna change his name from King from the King Rights to Super Center. He's just that dope. State your name. I mean, with an introduction like that, you just got to run it up.
Midas, make sure you put a king in front of that. Let's go.
All right. So we're gonna have a little fun today.
Mm-hmm.
How much fun we gonna have today? We're gonna have a lot of fun, a little fun.
I think this is a topic I don't think that's actually been explored. You know, at least to my knowledge, it hasn't been explored. I think it's a fun topic, but I think it's a very meaningful topic because of a lack of a lot of father figures and things of that nature. So I think this is definitely one not only is entertaining but informational.
All right, so let's in King Midas words, let's go right into it. So, TV dads. Why are we discussing TV dads? Well, we're gonna tell you. For a lot of people, they did not have strong male role models around them, or they did have male role models around them, but the male role models that they had around them wasn't a perfect fit. So a lot of us were able to find somewhat of a role model from the TV dads that we were privileged to see, especially in the Black community. And it's not because of the lack of fathers or the lack of positive male influence, but more so because of the fact that it was our vision of getting somebody either to tell our story or somebody to tell the story that's not being told about what fatherhood in the Black community looks like. And growing up in the 90s, we were gifted to be able to see several different versions of the affluent dad, of the blue collar, hardworking dad, of the just below poverty dad. We saw a myriad of different dads, and we saw a myriad of different techniques. And I think that to a certain degree, we take a lot of those things with us. So, with that being said, I'm going to hand it off to you, and you let me know where we're going to begin.
You know what? I want to start with I think a dad that everybody should know. And let's start with Mr. Sherman Hemsley, George Jefferson.
See, we moving on up.
Yeah, he, entrepreneur, businessman, he ran the cleaners, uh definitely had his issues with Lionel. But he definitely taught a lot of A1 fatherly, lessons. So let's start with him.
All right, so Sherman Hemsley was the actor who played George Jefferson in the show The Jeffersons. The Jeffersons was before our time, like 1980s, but at the same time it still rerun a lot, so we were able to see pretty much every episode that was ever done of it, and we got to watch a comedic way of looking at affluency, but it was a specific type of affluency, right? It was somebody who started from nothing, that worked himself up brick by brick to become something, and was still able to maintain who he was and his roots and his values, although his income changed. And I think that what made him such an influential dad is the fact that he never raised his son with the money. He raised him with the values. So you didn't see a spoiled version of his son. You didn't see somebody, you saw somebody who had privileges, but you didn't see somebody. It's almost like Lionel's character to me is somebody who may have watched his dad become who he was. That he wasn't born into the wealth, but he was
Mhm.
able to see it over time. So as he started to grow up, he grew up reaping the benefits of the success in real time rather than being a situation where he was born and again, like without knowing the background plot, that's the vibe that you get off the character
That
who
you
played
get from the
Lionel.
show. Yeah. And I think that, with Lionel, he was already grown, what I'm saying, on the show. So to me, I kind of felt like you got to see, the interactions of still dealing with your father as an adult. And, what I'm saying, Lionel himself still having issues and things of that nature, but still, you know, being able to rely on his father to help him get through different things and different situations and maneuver through life. So I think that was really a great thing to see as well, to see that they, what I'm saying, they bumped heads a lot, but they still had a bond with each other with him being an adult. And I really like that.
Yeah, and I think that if you really think about a lot of those shows from back in the day, with the exception of maybe like Good Times, because like you think about like Sanford and Son, despite the condition of Sanford and Son, Fred still had in an adult way a relationship with his son,
Mhm.
to where they dealt as adults. So our entire interaction, we never seen the interaction of what they dealt with as children, but we saw the interaction of what they dealt with father and son, but as an older man
Mhm.
and his adult son and the family business.
Yeah, I think that was pretty dope. Um, are you familiar with the Proud Family show?
Of course, Oscar Proud, Proud Snacks. Of course.
Oscar Proud. So I know this is a cartoon, but man, there was a lot to learn
He's a
from.
TV dad.
He's still a TV dad, but what I'm saying, it was definitely a lot to learn. So Tommy Davidson, the famous comedian. All right. So what I got out of the show is that, there's no manual, when it comes to being a dad. Okay, there's no manuscript, there's no scroll, there's no information out there. You do got a bunch of people that, drop tidbits and tips and tricks and stuff like that, but there's no actual guideline on how to actually be a father and raise your child right. Everybody has their own, ideology of how raising a kid uh is right to them. So, but what I did like about the show is that even though he was really quirky, a lot of times he didn't really get like a lot of things that was going on or a lot of things that was said to him. However, he showed up, what I'm saying? No matter what, no matter how much trouble his kids got in, no matter how, blatantly ignorant he may have been to the whole situation, didn't know what he was getting into. It didn't matter. He stood tall because he was a father. He stood by his kids and he showed up. That was pretty much the premises of the show. No matter what, I'm dad, I'm going to show up. And that's what I really liked about the show.
What I really liked about the show was that it gave you the strict contrast, right? You think about the Gross sisters and the type of situation that they were in. Like, it gave you the semblance of, like, I've never seen the Gross sisters' father at any point in time. And it's like you sit there and you look at certain characters and their lack of male influence. You look at Penny Proud and how grounded she was having that influence. And then even the other girl, I guess it was like Penny's rival or whatever. And Magic Johnson played, I guess not Magic Johnson, but like the figure who was kind of like the Magic Johnson esque um, shadowy figure in the background
Yeah.
who was
Yeah.
like the boss of bosses. He was her dad. And you could see a clear difference between the kids who had fathers and male role models and how, like, no matter how they deviated, they always seemed to snap it back in control. And it's like it's certain things that you never really notice until you get old enough to look at it, to where it's just like every show with the TV dad is that the kids always went to a certain extent and they never crossed over to the deep end where they could have went, because dad was there. And
Yeah.
he wasn't always there when you called, but he was always on time.
He was always on time. He
So there
showed
was
up.
there was one very specific one, deviating from the Proud Family example. I don't know if you remember Family Matters. Obviously, Matters was a big time thing.
Carl
TGIF.
Winslow.
You know what I'm saying? God, it's like you could just go so many different ways, bro. Like one dad just begets another dad, bro. Like so. All
Yeah.
right, so
Yeah.
for the sake of time, we're gonna keep it pushing. So, Eddie Winslow, he got jumped by some gangbangers. You know, he in Chicago. Situations happen. And obviously, Eddie Winslow's father, you know, Carl, was a city of Chicago cop. So as people think about retaliating and all this other stuff like that, dad was available to mediate that situation to prevent his son from feeling like he had to go out there and go retaliate and go get his thing back.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's like there was another episode that I remember to where his son got pulled over and he was given got arrested by a racist cop. And this is long before Black Lives Matter. It's long before any of this stuff that we've seen. This is like Rodney King era. You know what I'm saying? So son get pulled over by the cop, get arrested and stuff like that, but he legitimately didn't do anything. And then again, it's like, you know, Carl is a cop, goes to another cop, and it's like he's weighing out between being the cop and being a dad. And then once he did his due diligence and research, he checked the cop. And that's one thing that is like from TV land. That's the one thing that we've been begging for out here in the streets with all of this woke stuff that's going on, with the Ferguson situation, with the Trayvon Martin situation, with all these things that we've seen, to where we've been looking for, because cops are going to be on code. And the one thing that episode specifically stood out and it made you wonder, and made you wish, when do the good cops speak up and say enough is enough of the bad cops? When do the good cops stop feeling the need to protect the bad cops that you know are dirty, that you know are doing wrong? Even if you don't address them outright publicly and condone them publicly, what are y'all doing on the inside to address those dirty cops? And that's one of the things that we as a community have been screaming for years, the fact that it's like, who's protecting us from the bad guy, but who's also protecting the image of the good guys? Because if you are protecting the bad cops, you are a bad cop by default.
Yeah, it's basically who's policing the police.
You know, what's the checks and balance system from within? So that was a couple of episodes of Family Matters that stood out to where you seen, and even with the like kind of fun loving, you know, he wasn't an aggressive type of TV dad. You know, he wasn't a raw type of guy. But when it came time to it, for him to get him some behind, he got in some behind, and it was it wasn't there was a line. And as cool and laid back and mild mannered as he wanted to be, you knew when Carl spoke, and that's one of the most beautiful lessons I want to speak on, is that when you heard Carl speak, you knew for a fact everybody better shut up, because he don't do it often. He
don't do it often.
He was even tempered. He kept himself under control, especially being in a position of authority that he was in within the street. He never abused that with his family. He never abused it based on his role and his character. His moral compass was good, and when it was time for him to lay the hammer down, everybody shut up and listened.
And then, you know what I'm saying, what kept him calm, it was his famous saying, you know what I'm saying, for anybody that's never seen the show. He used to say 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. What the heck is bothering me? And that's how he would kind of like woosah and calm down and make sure that, you know what I'm saying, he didn't go eight, you know. So, you know, something to think about for your own self, for your own life. So let's segue away from Carl Winslow, great father. Let's talk about Michael Kyle from My Wife and Kids, played by Damon Wayans. Now, his I think between a little bit of Carl Winslow, he had a little bit of Carl Winslow in him. But what I liked about Damon here was the fact that his particular father, well, him playing this particular father, was that he would let you fail so that you can see the best way to succeed. And I think that, you know, a lot of fathers, you know, or rather the way the kids are raised today, that it's kind of a lot of coddling because we're in such a emotional intelligent state now where we pretty much have to walk on eggshells and all that. Where him, it wasn't necessarily hardcore or rough or anything like that, but he let you put your neck out there to get sliced so that you understood how that night felt, reel you back in, and then show you the right and correct way. And I,
But
I like that about him.
he had no problem calling you stupid.
No, for sure. For sure.
So there's two dads that I think that is like at the top of the food chain, proverbial food chain. When you think of, especially like in the black community, dads,
Mm-hmm.
there are two dads that set the bar, and they are complete opposites of each other in almost every way. And I'm gonna let you choose one,
Sure.
and I'll take the other one. But before we get there, we cannot pass up Uncle Phil. Let's talk about Uncle Phil.
Oh, I thought Uncle Phil was one of the top tier. One of the
Uncle
top
Phil ain't one
tier.
of the two, and you know that. Let's talk about Uncle Phil. Because
Okay.
Uncle Phil had a very interesting contrast because Uncle Phil was from the streets of Philadelphia. He knew what it was, but his kids grew up in the affluency. They grew up in the money. They knew the high life. And you could
Mm-hmm.
kind of notice like certain elements of the spoiledness, especially when you sing like Hillary's demeanor and then sometimes Carlton's demeanor. And Ashley seemed to be the one that was more level-headed of the three kids, but she drew to Will a lot more. And it's like Will was just, I guess, Will was like, because he was from the street, although he didn't have a street role, he was kind of like the hood dude. He was the one that was hip to the street, so to speak. And that's why Ashley kind of gravitated to him because it was like that element of that thing that she kind of desired to be regular. She never really seemed like she was one of them that she cared too much about the money and the perks of being rich. She seemed like she was more so along the lines of, "Hey man, I'm grounded. I'm a regular kid. That's all I really care about." Now, when you look at that and you say to yourself, first and foremost, Aunt Vivian got a paint job,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So we're gonna just that had nothing to do with anybody but the writers. So Aunt Viv got a massive paint job, but
Mm-hmm.
shout out to that. But despite that, we start talking about Uncle Phil, Philip Banks. What made Philip Banks so influential is his story. But see, the thing is that Philip Banks had an issue. And here's one of the things that I can relate to Uncle Phil with is when you come from a certain area and you bust your behind to achieve such a level of success, so to speak, you don't want to constantly be reminded about where you came from. And when you look at like his mom, I always used to call him by his boyhood name, Zeke and stuff like that. I guess he was actually no, he wasn't from the streets of Philadelphia. He was from the farm of Pennsylvania. She used to call him Zeke. He didn't grow up on the mean street. So okay, so now it's coming back to me. But he was ashamed of where he was from. He had shame about where he was from. And a lot of times when we sit here and we look at ourselves, a lot of us, and the reason why we are striving to succeed so bad is because we are ashamed of where we're from. We are. We are. We are. I have no problem admitting the fact that when I call my family a lot of times, and when I have conversations with, saying this side of the family that just can't seem to get it together, it does bring me a sense of shame. And I will tell anybody that there's absolutely nothing wrong with shame. If we had more shame, we'd have less of the situations that we have. We'd have less absentee fathers. We'd have less unwed mothers. We have less of a lot of things if shame was still an aspect of the community. And I have no problem saying that, certain behaviors, in order to, if you knew that those behaviors would bring shame to your people, like, the most affluent communities understand, like, to be in certain sectors of the Asian community where education is so highly valued and you want to be an idiot all your life, there's shame that comes along with that.
Mm-hmm.
To be a part of certain aspects of the Jewish community and to not be successful, there's a shame that comes along with that. There's a shame that comes along with not being, saying like being certain sectors of Indian or certain Middle Eastern and not being successful. There's a shame that comes along with those things. And you hear the stories all the time. I'm not making it up. It's all over the internet of people talking about, oh, because of my sexual preference, or because of my this, or because of my that, my family disowned me, and so forth, and etc. Because yes, those communities are huge about preservation. They understand self-preservation, and anything that deviates or creates a rift in the ability to preserve itself and to grow and to create and to create a greater, to pass something down to the next generation, there's a level of shame about that. And I feel like Uncle Phil had that looming over him, and that's why he went as hard as he did to create a level of success for him and his family. I mean, you have to think about it. It's just like to work yourself up from farmland to judge. Huge deal. Huge deal.
That's a big undertaking.
Yeah, I mean, it's great because, I mean, it's a great undertaking mainly because of the fact that you come from a farm environment. So how many lawyers do you see in that farm environment, which means that you had to have had something in you festering that made you head for the hills as soon as you could, that made you fight and compete against everybody else to achieve such a level of high regards, to get yourself through law school, to get yourself through being successful as a lawyer, to being appointed as a judge. Like, that's a hell of a feat. And you have to think about it. From the age range, give or take, about where his character was when he was introduced to us as, Judge Phil, his kids were still pretty much teenagers. Hillary was the only adult. So for real, it's kind of like he was relatively young at that. So it shows you that he was highly competitive, that he was highly motivated, and family was first. It was the most important factor to him. Think about how many people that wear their background on their back, that are comfortable and complacent in where they are. And think about conversations that you and I had about things that we wish our parents would have told us about credit, and things they would have taught us about money management and saving. And hey, before you do this, that, and the third, go buy a house. Go get it right now. Hey, let me teach you about interest rates. There's certain things that we feel ashamed of, that because of the shame that I felt about what my parents couldn't teach me, is the reason why my daughter is so ahead of the 8 ball now. She knows what's in her bank account. She knows what she has to spend. She knows how to create a budget. She knows, hey, if I'm about to go over here and make a transaction on my credit cards to get this point, I know that I can't spend more than what I got available to spend in my checking account. Let me sit down and have a conversation with mom and dad to make sure that I'm looking at things correctly before I go out and go spend what I'm going to spend at Five Below or go to the movies or whatever have you. So the shame that I felt from what I didn't get ultimately led to a better education for my offspring. And that's why I led Philip Banks as an honorable mention. What are
I
your
think
thoughts?
I think that, saying, bouncing back to Shane real quick, I think that that definitely builds a lot of character within individuals. Behavior issues, would, I ain't gonna say that they would be non-existent, but they definitely would be under control. And to your point, Shane actually builds, a thriving community. You know, uh, I don't. I can't add nothing else. Them ribs are saucy when they come to Uncle Phil. Like I said, I thought he was gonna be one of the top two, but I
Nah.
definitely know for sure which one. If I had to pick a top one, I know for a fact who that one is. So who's second?
You name it. Who you think the top two is?
Number one is going to be Heathcliff Huxtable. That is number one. Okay. I don't know who number two is.
James Evans.
For some reason, something told me you was gonna say him.
But that's what I told you. Go ahead and guess. Because
Something
like I
told
said, they are
me.
polar opposites in
I didn't
approach.
want to be wrong. I didn't want to be
See,
wrong.
that's not extraordinary, man, because the way that you learn is that's not extraordinary, man. Take that hat off. Take that hat off.
Ah.
No, let's go outside so I can chastise you for doing that. Now, on a serious note, though, so you have, I want you to take one and I want you to give a breakdown. You choose which one you want to take, and I'll take the other one.
I'm gonna go with James Evan, and I really like James Evan because he really showed his children, what it's like to really work hard to achieve and to amount to things that whatever you want to do, whatever you put your mind to, that you can go out there and go get it. He represents the working man. He represents the fathers that go out there and get it, the ones that put their family first, make sure the food is on the table, will work day in and day out all day long, will scrimp and scrape, what I'm saying, to make sure if his wife asks for something, he's the one that's going to go out there and scrimp and scrape, work to the bone to get whatever he need to go make his wife happy, to make sure his kids got clothes. That's why I really like James Evan. He really represented the working father for real.
So here's why. Here's what Bill Cosby is. So Bill Cosby, in my opinion, he was more so of James Evans was the example of what a lot of us who actually did see fathers was. The guy that got outside and went to go make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
I felt Bill Cosby was more of the who we should aspire to be. He was the aspiration because he made not only did he make himself a success, he was very successful in the partner that he chose to bring his kids in with.
Mm-hmm.
She was highly goal oriented, but she was highly family motivated. She was the example of the woman who could have the career and raise the children. Because for whatever reason in our community, it's almost like being a boss bae and all this other stuff like that seems to take precedence over being mom and being wife. But the depiction of Claire was that she was able to figure out how to do it both. She could be a successful attorney, but she was also a very respected mother. And despite the fact that she was a bulldog in the courtroom and she was a bulldog when it came down to the kids and stuff like that, she was definitely zero tolerance with a lot of stuff. Shout out to Felicia Rashad because she seemed like that's how she carried it in her real life. But despite any of the nuances, you never seen disrespect for Cliff. He was very mild mannered. He dealt with everything from a perspective of rational thought. You never seen Cliff get out of his body or out of his emotions. When he dealt with the kids and when the wife dealt with the kids, they were always on the same accord. They had a
Yep.
different approach about how they dealt with stuff. And there'd be some things to where it's like, I'm gonna let your mama get you because you need that. But I'm completely in agreement with what she say. There's never well, you go to dad gonna say this and mom is gonna say that. I think there's a couple episodes of that, but for the most part, they were on the same accord. There was never the dysfunctional household situation. The kids wasn't goof ups. Even Denise, who seemed to be like more of the free spirited of the children, she wasn't a goof off. You know what I'm saying? She just had a different walk. But the same token, it's just like the parents had a very strict thing to where it's like, hey, college or work. But once you get to that age, I did my job, you out. I
Yeah.
gave you everything that you're supposed to have.
Yeah, and what I really liked about Cliff as well was even though he was well, you know what I'm saying, well, I guess
Affluent.
soft spoken.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, he was soft spoken, he was calm, collective and everything, but he let it be known that he wasn't no pushover. You're not gonna get over him.
Yeah.
And I like that about him too. Just because I'm cool don't mean I'm a doormat either. You know, and I really respected that about him too. So he knew how to turn it on and off.
And his sweater game was on point.
What? Come on, man. It was better than Biggie's.
Huh. So one thing I will say specifically, right, is that I think that when we have to do the comparison and contrast of the parenting, the only real issue that I had with James Evans is the fact that, and it wasn't really James, it was more so Florida. I felt like the woman that he chose, maybe it was because of the level that he was in, that's the best that he could do. But she seemed to be very negative. She seemed to be very she didn't seem like she complimented him. He seemed like, and again, is that I see more Floridas than I ever see Claire's. And I feel like he'll come up with an idea or he'll get this thought process, get excited about something, and then she'll bring him down. I felt
Yeah.
like a lot of his aspirations were crushed by Florida. And I think that it was just more so of the fact that she inflicted a lot of fear and negativity, a lot of complacency in James. And it was to the family's detriment of what it actually did to them for the reason why they never actually made it beyond the borders of where they were.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the times when you sit there and you think about it, despite it being TV, you sit there and you look at somebody like Cliff. It seems like they had the plan together when they got together before they started bringing the kids in, or at least the early stages of bringing kids in. They were already walking out of what they were doing by the time Sandra came into play, you know, the oldest daughter. And you could see the level headedness of the kids because clearly there wasn't a whole bunch of confusion, a whole bunch of this, a whole bunch of that. Obviously, you being able to raise your kids in an area to where it was nice, but at the same token, you never seen the kids ever like, mom and dad's money is my money. They all were given an opportunity to go out and go discover what their purpose was. So one is going to Hillman. This one, she married to the Navy dude. This one over here, she hooked up with Elvin. They got whatever situation that they got going on. You know what I'm saying? Rooted. She got her situation going on. Theo, he got his situation. But none of them were, everybody had their own individual. And that's one thing I do think I embrace about it is that when you sit there and you look at Cliff, one of the things that I can appreciate the most is that it seemed like he had a good grasp of having an individual relationship with all of the children.
Yeah, he knew them all.
He knew and
He knew
understood
his
each one of his children. He knew what they were going to do before they did it. And I think that's one of the most essential things about dad is that dad is always paying attention. So even when I'm sitting here looking at myself, like I'll just sit back and I'll just be sitting back chilling while I might be watching TV, and like my daughter might not know that I'm observing her behavior. I'm seeing things that she's doing. I'm watching how she's maneuvering. I'm paying attention. I might go in a room, look for something, but I'm taking mental notes of different things and different behaviors. So, okay, when you sitting here like that. Okay, what are you stressing out about? And then
Yeah.
like, okay, cool. I know that you close lip. All right, cool. I understand your style. So what I say is, hey, I don't know if something's wrong with you, but in case something is wrong with you, just know that the door is open and you and dad can talk whenever you're ready. So it's one of those things that I kind of adopted from that understanding of what that specific TV dad did. So now I want to do one very specific thing before we close out. I want to rank top 5 TV dads. Who and I want you to start from your number 5, and I want you to work up to your number 1.
Okay. 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 Let me think. Okay. Number 5. Number 1, of course, being the
Even if we
top.
didn't, even if we didn't name them in the list, it could be somebody else. It could be Danny Tanner. It could be dude from the Dinosaurs. If you got a TV dad, name him.
Ooh, the dude from the dinosaurs. Ooh. He
And
not on my list though, but yeah, that's cool though.
listen, we went the Proud Family. I mean, we could go anywhere. Just if you could
Okay.
think about your top 5 TV dads, who if you even look at yourself and say, I kind of took something from there. I took something from there. I think the Proud Family, Oscar Proud is definitely gonna make it on your list because of that entrepreneurial spirit that you got.
Oh, you okay? Did she make it? No. Oh. Small situation. You need my help? Okay. Yeah, boo. Right after this. I got you. Sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, number 5, definitely, I brought him up. Is definitely gonna be Tommy Davidson for Proud. Um, that's 5. Number 4. mm, I would say let's go back to James Avery with Sparks. I
Mm,
thought he was good on there. Let's go to who I want to go to. I'll put Michael Kyle at 3, you know what I'm
mm.
saying? And then Dr. Phil and then Cliff.
Say
That
Dr.
would be my
Phil,
top.
or you mean Uncle Phil?
I'm sorry. Well, yeah, my bad. I'm thinking of Dr. Huxtable and at the same time. But
All
yeah,
right.
Uncle Phil.
So yo,
You
so
know
yo,
what? I'm gonna take out Proud Family and I'm gonna put James in there simply because me and him workaholics, we so alike when it comes to that aspect, when it comes to work. I work sun up to sundown, hour sleep here, 2 hours of sleep there to get it, to make sure that my kids are straight. You know what I'm saying? I'm hustling, making sure that I'm be able to put my kids in private school and putting my daughter in coding classes and AI classes as well. And you know what I'm saying? So I can really attest to his story of being a working class man, being the working man. So yeah, that's my 5.
all right. So my 5 are as followed: Danny Tanner, it's my number 5
Mm, okay.
because number 1, he had he was successful. Number 2, he was a single father, but he also knew to keep the right people around him to assist him. It was the complete opposite of what we see today, to where it's a whole bunch of women raising men children. Instead, it was a whole bunch of men raising female children, and all the female children were level-headed. You could see you could kind of see the effects in the acting or the way that the roles were written, that the girls were very level-headed. It was very clear that men were the primary forces involved in how they were raised. I would say Oscar Proud definitely makes my number 4. And the reason why Oscar Proud makes my number 4 is because of the fact that he and I share something. That even though he got up, he worked his job, take care of his family, provide a life, he always had dreams and ambitions, and he never stopped working toward them. No different than his podcast, no different than Phil Jones Clothing, shameless plug, no different than anything else that is that I've been doing over the years. I've never not had something going on. I've had to learn a lot along the ways, but I mean, you think about it from Streetwise Records all the way up until now, there's always been something. I've never not did something just because certain things didn't land or I wasn't mature enough to see it. I feel like the spirit of Proud Snacks is kind of the same boat as the Extraordinary Man podcast. I'm going to keep going. I don't care if I don't have the formula right now to have the best snack. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep making these snacks until I perfect the recipe. I'm going to keep dropping these videos once a day. I just got a video that did 28,700 views and counting. I'm going to keep dropping. Thank you. I'm going to keep dropping. Now I'm trying to get the subscribers to match the view count. But that's why he makes my list, because of the fact I feel like he embodies something direct with me that is indicative of what a man should do. That no matter what you do, you should always have your own goal. You should always have your own desire to build your own legacy. And that's something I can never not respect. It's one thing with the James Evans that he gonna get out there, he gonna work, and he gonna make it happen. But he gonna make it happen to get you through the day, get you through the month, to get the bills paid, and then he back on the grind again. Oscar Proud was trying to get over. He already figured that part out. Now I'm trying to get to the boss who's steady talking crazy. I'm trying to employ his kids. I'm trying to one up you. I'm gonna show you what I'm made of. That's why Oscar Proud kind of take that number 4 spot for me. Number 3, I say number 3 for me would probably be a tie between Uncle Phil and James. And here's why. They both were disciplinarians. You knew not to play with them. Like, all the jokes aside, all of this, all of that, is like you just knew JJ, when he wanted to be too stupid, he got checked. Will, you get too stupid, you get checked. And you knew when it's just like, hey, I want to be a fool. Okay, time to fall back. Time to fall back. And like all good disciplinarians, we soft on our daughters, so whatever. But
yes.
Number two for me would probably have to be the Brady dad.
You know what? Oh, I was gonna leave him for a special thing, but you know what? Mike Brady. Let's go.
Mike Brady. So the reason why I like Mike Brady is because of the fact that despite his situation with, his ex, he took his boys and he had custody of his kids. And despite him saying, like, hey, you got your 3, I got my 3, we're going to go ahead and blend this family and make it what it is. I like the fact that he was involved and invested. I like the imagery of a man being invested with his kids. that despite the fact that my last situation didn't work out or whatever the circumstance with our last situation, I don't care nothing about that. I don't care nothing about what your last situation was. He embodied structure, even with the kids that wasn't his. He embodied structure. And I mean, it's kind of cool that you can afford to have a maid too, because the wife clearly didn't work. So, I mean, it's like clearly you were successful. Clearly you had things figured out. Clearly you were in a position to where you could take on all this responsibility and still be. And one of the things I like about all of these people is the fact that none of them were hotheads. None of them were loose cannons. They all understood a very basic principle that everything is home first.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is home first. And my number one would have to be Cliff Huxtable. And it's only Cliff Huxtable primarily because of the fact that he embodies the current mission. He embodies the long-term mission. Whether you're an entrepreneur, whether just highly successful in your field, whatever the circumstances may be, he made the right decisions. He made the right choices. He was very involved, very invested in his children. Like, you don't have absentee issues with the kids. You don't have drugged out, strung out kids. He created something. He created a structure that was so strong that it was emulatable, that his kids was able to go out into the world and go emulate the things that he received. And the one thing that I absolutely love about him is the fact that he had the quintessential strong black woman, not the dark-skinned Aunt Viv, fly off the handle whenever you want to. I'm this, I'm that, I'm the college professor. He didn't have that. He had a lawyer, a successful one. And at the same token, never lost his cool. He understood what her role was. He respected her role. He didn't feel like he was challenged by her. He didn't get ran over by her. He was every bit of what I see a man being. And in my opinion, because of the fact that he made the right decisions, he didn't have to overcompensate by trying to prove he was a man, because he had already laid the foundation first. So now he doesn't find himself competing with his wife. He doesn't find himself feeling subservient to his wife. He doesn't find himself having money conversations with his wife. He don't find himself having these issues that a lot of men have because they are not as successful as their wives, or they haven't reached that pinnacle of success yet. He did everything systematically. He did it right. And he made sure that no matter what the situation was, the foundation was here, the nucleus. We focus on the house. And you can not only just see how the kids benefited, but the friends of the kids all benefited.
You can tell that he took his time, and you can tell that he really had specific qualities that he was looking for out of Claire.
Absolutely.
He this and this, and she checked all the boxes.
And whether it developed over time or whether it was because again, you don't know the backstory like that. But for what it was worth, you saw that they complemented each other to where he did not have to be the rah, 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 because you're the lawyer. That's kind of your demeanor. You the doctor, you're patient, you're kind, you deliver babies. So you're patient, you're kind.
Manner is all,
Yeah, so
that's how it was carried out through the show.
Yeah, so you're the gynecologist, you are the OB, you're very kind, very chill, very relaxed. The same way he was with his patients, the same way he was with his kids. It's like I deal with things based off a practical nature. I don't deal with them based off how I feel about it. You never seen Cliff in any episode act out of his feelings. And no matter where he went, he never got disrespect.
Oh yeah, he was well respected. I think, before we get up out of here, I do want to make 2 honorable mentions. I know that we didn't, dig that deep into them, but I still think that they deserve to be mentioned, and I'm gonna tell you why. So my first mention is going to be Christopher Julius Rock II. everybody hates Chris. And the reason that I'm mentioning him is because, yes, he was cheap, and everything, but what he brought to the table was he showed you how to be mindful about your money. He showed you how to save. He showed you how to make sure that you got enough for a rainy day in case something happened. So he really brought forth, outside of, being extremely successful, he brought it down to a level where everybody that's actually really normal, that's living a normal life, on how to actually control your money. He taught you how to control your controllables. Okay. How to work that thermostat for real, turn them lights off, and this and that. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I like about him. He really brought that to the forefront. The next dad that I would like to bring to the forefront, and only a certain group of individuals can appreciate and relate to this father, and that's Thurgood Suggs, and that's from the PJs. And the reason that I mentioned him is because he showed you the life of what it was like growing up in a huge city project, and he gave you the game on how to not get played and how to be slick, and not how he taught you how to be slick and not get slicked. You know what I'm saying? So he really showed you the ins and outs of how to maneuver right, so you don't get involved in nothing. You can keep your nose clean. You in the hood, but he showed you how to maneuver through the hood so you can stay straight. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I mentioned him.
I like it. So, guys, thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of the Extraordinary Man Podcast with your host, Phil Jones. And you know what? I'm going to stop saying I'm the host. We're going to change it up officially today. We're going to say we are the hosts. That's it. No more I am the host. And then I thought about it long and hard, and I felt like I'm tired of introducing you as if you're a featured guest. It's like, this is our show.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It's like you had like the Howard Stern show, but then you also had Robin. Like, this ain't that type of show. If it's gonna be an A plus and an A minus Mike, then it needs to be introduced like one. So we got to come up with a brand new introduction. Let's see. Let's go ahead and test it. Let's try this outro out. All right, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Extraordinary Man Podcast. We are your host, Phil Jones, aka Mike Jones. Have you known me personally and professionally? And
King Midas. Damn, I fucked that up. Oh, my bad, y'all. Midas, make sure you put a king in front of that. Let's go. Even players screw up sometimes.
All right, y'all. That's our time. Peace.
Today has been an interesting show, none to say the least.
Man, all over the place.
All right, y'all.